we would be more secure and more peaceful. And whereas if we had suffered abuse from our mother or parents in our childhood, so we may grow to be very successful, famous and so forth, but still there is some sense of insecurity when meeting with other people, anxiety too. So mother's love is very important right in the beginning of our life. And on the basis of that care and love from our mother, it actually sustains us throughout our life. So lacking that love and compassion from our mother, the child grows up to be anxious and fearful. And so when meeting with scientists, when the scientists said that through their experiment, when they concluded that the basic human nature is compassionate, I felt that there was some hope then. So if that is the case, we can actually cultivate it further to strengthen the love and compassion that we have innately. So if our innate nature or basic nature is an anger, and to cultivate, and then to cultivate, cultivating love and compassion would be just a secondary matter. Whereas if because our basic nature is love, compassionate, there is an opportunity for us to strengthen it further through training. And so I make the point that love and compassion are the root of our happiness. So if we have, for example, a poor family where the family members are caring and loving to one another, they may be beggars, but beggar family, but because of their love and care for each other, I mean, they'll be living a very happy life. Whereas a very wealthy family may, if in such a family, if the family members are not able to trust one another, but live in suspicion, and then the family will not live a happy life. So this is clear. And therefore, since all of us want happiness, the building block of happiness is love and compassion. So when you have people loving, smiling, and so forth towards you, it creates a very a beautiful atmosphere around you. So if you are not like that, then you would have to rather pretend otherwise. So in 1954, I visited China, and I met many of the Chinese leaders, including Mao Zedong. And so when I met them, I was quite apprehensive and anxious. And the surrounding looked like doomed. So the my two tutors, Ling Rinpoche and Gyabje Ling Rinpoche and Gyabje Chijang Rinpoche, as well as Panchen Lama Rinpoche were there. So Ling Rinpoche was feeling very nervous at that time. And then in 1956, I came to India on the Buddha Jayanti, 2500th anniversary of the Buddha Jayanti. So when I had to meet with a big audience, and I was feeling rather nervous, whereas I mean I had to be very formal And since 1959, after coming into exile, I didn't have to care about being formal to anybody, and then I felt very relieved. So wherever I go, I always see that I'm meeting other human beings, whichever country or religious tradition others may be following. We are all human beings. We have one nose, two eyes, and so forth. So if I meet a human being with three eyes, I would have to think, perhaps, but physically, mentally, and emotionally, we are all same in terms of feeling happy or sad, and also physically. And so when you actually have this attitude of looking at others as being same like yourself, a human being, then you will not be considering others as enemies and so forth. So if you are rather open to others, you'll be able to make friends with others. So this is my own experience. And so from my own experience, to everyone, I tell them to be a compassionate and loving and kind person. Whether you believe in a religion or not doesn't really matter. And religion is an individual matter. It's up to the individuals. And whatever suits you, you should follow. Or if you follow religion, it should be the ones which suits you. So as social animals, human beings live in society. We are dependent on the community that we live in, and therefore to gather together, to attract or embrace others, we need, this is done by love and compassion. Whereas anger and hatred actually pushes people away from you. And so all social animals, to live together, we need an emotion which is love. Whether it's the wild animals living in the forest or they live together on the basis of love. And so we as social animals, as we are social animals, this is very important. Love and compassion are very important. So this is what I tell people all the time. I also practice them. And so those who have come here, you're also same human beings. And we are all same in not wanting suffering, but wanting happiness. Maybe there are differences in the size of our brain because of our head. Some have big heads, some have small, but so the prefrontal cortex seems to be related with our sensory perceptions, whereas the deep in the brain there is this organ called amygdala, which seems to be related with our emotions. And so psychologically also, we have the same experience. So as social animals, it's very important to cultivate and love and compassion. So I make it a point to talk about love and compassion. So we are part of the 7 billion human beings. And therefore, I wish to tell you that you, individually, you should practice love and compassion to have peace of mind. So if you have peace of mind, you will if you have love, you'll have peace of mind, and that in turn brings people close to you, and you have trust from others and friends. So friendship with others is very important. For that you need trust, and trust comes through your love and compassion. So I want to tell you this. So as a Buddhist practitioner who says that I praise, I call upon all sentient beings as my guests, and I also always every day practice the four immeasurables, the four Brahma Viharas, as they call it also. And we do pray that sentient beings may not have suffering. And therefore, if this is what we pray for, and we need to think that the only beings to whom we can directly or indirectly help are the 7 billion people on this earth. Practically, we can do that. There are living beings in other galaxies and so forth. We could only say prayers for their happiness and alleviation of their suffering. So if you really pray sincerely, and practically what we should do is try to help the 7 billion people on this earth. Other animals like fish, insects, and so forth, of course, they become our objects of our prayers. So this is what I wish to tell my Dharma brothers and sisters, all my brothers and sisters here, to practice love and compassion. And then secondly, as a practitioner of Buddhism, I try to promote religious harmony. And today in the world, if we look around, in the name of religion, there are so much killing and fighting amongst people. So I always say that religion, the religious traditions in the world have to do with human beings. They are human religions. So all the major religious traditions on this earth have the same message, which is love. And because this is something which we need as human beings, all the religions also teach this message. And even with regard to the theistic religious traditions who talk about Creator God, the nature of Creator God is love, infinite love. And so all these religious traditions related to human beings teach love and compassion. And therefore, for the over 3,000 years in India, for example, all the different religious traditions have emerged, and all of them teach love, compassion, contentment, tolerance, and self-discipline. Of course, philosophically, these religious traditions may have different ideas. So because of difference in mental dispositions among human beings, we need these different philosophical concepts, and even amongst the followers of the Buddha himself, the same teacher, due to the mental dispositions, difference in the mental dispositions of his followers, the Buddha taught these philosophical views of the Vaibhashikas, Sutrantikas, Chittamatrans, and Madhyamakas, each of which have their own subdivisions. So similarly, in all the religious traditions, though we have different philosophical views, these religious traditions have different philosophical views, but the purpose of all these is to enhance and to develop or promote love and compassion. In the case of Islam, for example, they talk about Allah, and Allah is the creator of the whole universe or cosmos, and Allah, the nature of Allah is that of infinite love, and therefore we are all seen as creation of such an infinite love. We are all children of such an infinite love. So if you sincerely practice such a religion which emphasizes love, how can we actually kill one another? Because the Creator God is Himself infinite love. We must make it a point to practice love and compassion. How can we actually go about killing one another? So, my friends, in Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and so forth, there are many of them who are because they are very sincere about their own religious tradition. They are different, kind and compassionate people. So the love and compassion are something which we need, and they do have impact on the world. And of course, the different philosophical views are necessary because of the different mental dispositions of human beings. As I said earlier, religion is an individual matter. It's up to the individuals whether they want to follow a religion or not. But if you really follow a religion, you should be sincere about it. To practice love and compassion, which is the essential message. Whereas on the basis of this difference in the religious traditions, if we create division amongst ourselves, it's like this nectar of religion is turned into poison. So all the religious traditions benefit human beings. So this attendant was holding the cup of hot water or tea for His Holiness and standing at the door looking at me, he says. So His Holiness asked him to bring it. So we'll have a 15-minute break. We'll have a break for 15 minutes here. If you need to go to the restroom, please do so. Oh. Alta de Jurgen Mare. Dikie Mare. Chezan Konzu di Nondri Chebre. Ditsu Nondri Chebre. That the Yatangi Deora. Didn't you agree me how much? Didn't you draw?
땡에 되기 시작하더래. 한국 가라서 신용 롭스 나라 참지해야 돼. 롭스 경우도 되기도 와. 세상가 지금 뭐 이제 장냥 상담되는 지 아니 내가 내가 제못해야 지기 롭스 레벨 그도了 지금 애니 좀不是好用的呀。 지금 지소나네 필요해서 근데 용도가 뭐 장장선 마땅치네 그다음 참지시냐 지 생각나네 정답돼야 되는데 추유간에 유유 예배지 뭐 있나 그거 잡아이네 이도 무슨 상당 도로 하다 가지고 녀들 들으셔 로켓 가지고 계속 말해 간다 생기 뒤지셔야지 류를 때뭐 지고 말해 제가 되게 늘려야들이 사실이 인도 다가다 논주 상물로 가서 한다 여자 여신배 신윤 저단디 당금이도 신윤 저단디 친구가 야제 장장을 밑에서 마도 난 쓴거 걸 가게 신문도 와 교사로 엔트나다 지마 러시아는 저기도 내한다 참지배야 차진디 신용부터는 참즈배고도 최신이 참즈배야 말이스 신용부터는 참즈배고도 저 진짜 인도산에 내 들으께서 됐어요. The hygiene of physical. Similarly, we need hygiene of emotion. 간다지 리뷰 최대 나도 로종 저기 알아봐. 간다지 리뷰 생그 최대 로종 저고도. 사진 다 띵아서 지금 최대기 다 차셔지다. 성동당 차내 샤마도 최께지 그 말이지. 도선이 되는 점을 꾸를 켜둬야지 봐. 어디를 말들이 용도가 지금 최저가 더는 성당으로 예정을 주제 거북거북 차베이네 시 심리야 안 되직다 즉 성동야 뒤주 망을 입었어. 제가 사고도 용을 친지. 또 최저 성당하면은 아니 지당 그당 가서 고속당 뭐 이야기를 내가 지고 제대로 아니 그 개유 처음으로 레벨 그돌 아니 메고를 지하스면 되었어. 아니 정신기 내 모습을 가셔요. 아니 쇼를 내가 개유 전에 내가 막 샤차를 절 미리 좀 겁주도 겁주야 싱그러워. 사실이 인도 딩모 장장 마도 그 로종 중요 말와. 아니 미스코라 말아서 들이께서 전문이 지속거라 지금 materialistic life, materialistic culture. 딩아서 요 당과 저래. 다 살래.
kulon sang wes kulon shana kulon setan khande se gore cham ning ji nyamle khande che gore choni Yeah, subdue. My gosh. So I'm sorry, we had a misunderstanding. So His Holiness was asked earlier about compassion, and he was talking about all religions basically talk about compassion, but in Buddhism we have practices such as the four immeasurables and so forth. So with regards to this question, the question is about whether His Holiness has ever been an angry young man, and how did he subdue anger. So if you read the 6th chapter of Bodhisattva Charya Avatara by Shanti Deva, a guide to the Bodhisattva way of life, you'll learn about how to combat anger. And His Holiness is saying, if you live an angry life, will you be happy? So even when you face some provocation, you should try to keep your calm and then try to respond to the challenge that is posed to you, and you'll be able to be more successful. So if you practice without anger, if you practice tolerance or patience, and then try to see the weak points, weakness of your opponent, their shortcomings, and where you should find the weak point in the person, and then if you want to retaliate, you should do whatever is necessary to be able to respond effectively. So with regard to anger and compassion, we don't need to talk about anger leading us, that anger will lead us to lower realms of existence, and the compassion will lead us to higher realms of existence. But you should actually see for yourself the benefits of love and compassion. As it is said, do not commit any evil or wrongdoings, cultivate a wealth of virtues, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is teaching of the Buddha, and so you should be able to practice without anger, but with love and compassion. So there is lots of pressure in the modern world. Jimba. So there are people, because of pressure in life, committing suicide. So how should one help? So for Tibetans, we could say that the friends could recite the Om Mani Padme Hum, the 6-syllable mantra of Avalokiteshvara for those who commit suicide. So what I'm talking about when I say that we should promote love and compassion is to do so through education, through the school system. So when you are able to educate people in love and compassion, it will be effective. And therefore, in the Indian tradition, we have the means to counter our anger and hatred, and to cultivate love and compassion. So even before the Buddha appeared in the world, in India, the Indian tradition already had the practice of calm abiding, shamatha, and vipassana, which is the penetrative insight. And so, for over 3,000 years, these practices have been there in the Indian traditions, whereas this kind of educational system of training one's mind through these meditative procedures seems to have waned in India after the British introduced modern education. And therefore, today I'm talking about, these days I talk about revival of the ancient Indian knowledge in modern India, not through any religious dogma or religious means, but through secular principles. So if we could combine the modern education and the ancient Indian knowledge, India has the opportunity to do so. So these ancient Indian knowledge are already there in India. It's their own tradition. So in many cases, in the schools, educational systems, there is lack of ethics, and the secular ethics or principles, and therefore people commit suicide when they're faced with challenges and pressure. If you have questions, please write them and give it up to the Venerable in English. No question? So His Holiness says, I don't know. So you need to check yourself, look around and learn more about what's going on around you, and then check. He was not using it. It's very difficult. In the contemporary world, people have difficulty being honest. But if you try to take sides with people, then some are hurt, while you may be able to help others. So how should we deal with the society today? So the whole society today seems to be lacking in moral principles. So because of focusing on material development alone, people don't see attachment and anger and so forth to be negative. In fact, if you are full of the attachment called greed and anger and so forth, they are seen to be more successful. So what we are talking about is, of course, today's world is full of these negativities, but we may not be able to do much. But if we educate the younger generation today, then in the next 20, 30 years, we may be able to bring about some change in people's life. So perhaps we should stop here for the question and answer. So religious harmony is very essential. I personally sincerely respect Christianity, Islam, because they help many people. And to be able to do this, I usually to show that it's possible to practice our religious harmony, I usually use India as the example. Because in India, we have homegrown religions, like those of the Sankhya school, and from which the different strands of Hinduism and so forth developed. And then there are also Jainism and Buddhism, and then also later Sikhism developed in this very country. Whereas there are other religions which emigrated to this land, such as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and also the ancient Persian religion, Zoroastrianism. So the Parsis today in India and live mostly in Mumbai. There are less than 100,000 people who follow, but they have no fear living amongst the other people following other religions. Millions of them, in fact, amongst millions of them. And so the religious harmony has actually existed in India for over 1,000 years now. And therefore, I endeavor to bring about religious harmony. So you, as my friends, should try to also think about promoting religious harmony. Go and consider this. And regarding Buddhism, it originated in India, and then in the beginning, of course, there was the Pali tradition, which has spread in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, Cambodia, and Laos. And in these countries, the followers practice Vinaya, the monastic code of discipline, which is very good practice, and there's very good practice of Vinaya in these countries. And then later, gradually, the Sanskrit tradition of Buddhism spread in India. And in the past, there were the institutions like Takshashila and the Nalanda and Vikramalashila, which were institutions for learning the Sanskrit tradition. And in most of the masters whose writings we study, such as Nagarjuna and so forth, actually studied in Nalanda. They were products of Nalanda. And so there had been many great masters of Nalanda, monastic institution. And so there was a very good education system in Nalanda through which many scholars emerged, and Sanskrit was the medium of their education. And so there were many scholars, masters who were products of Nalanda. And so this Nalanda tradition first spread from India to China. Tangsan or Xuanzang came to India. And when he came to India, there was Naga Bodhi. It is said that somebody told me that at that time, Tangsan had said that Naga Bodhi was still alive. So this is what I heard from somebody. And so the Chinese are also followers of the Master Nagarjuna's tradition, the Sanskrit tradition. So it spread from India to China first, and then in the 8th century, the Tibetan king Chisung Detsen invited the Indian master Chandrakshita to Tibet, and he brought the Nalanda tradition to Tibet. He was himself a scholar of logic, and he has written the book on logic and epistemology, and also being a scholar of Madhyamaka, the philosophical school, he also wrote texts on Madhyamaka philosophy. And so, in Nalanda, the study of logic was considered very important. But in China, it seems people have not taken much interest in logic. So in other words, the countries are followers of the Nalanda tradition. So from China, of course, the Nalanda tradition spreads to Korea, Vietnam, and Japan. And so all of us who recite the Heart Sutra are the followers of Nalanda tradition. And then Mongolia also. And then there's a few republics within the Russian Federation also are the followers of the Nalanda tradition. So in many of the countries in Asia are followers of Nalanda tradition. And so I have written a praise to the 17 Nalanda masters. So all the followers of the Nalanda tradition, including in the main Tibetans or Tibet, for us, these 17 Nalanda masters are very important. So I've written this praise to the Nalanda masters. Oh, it's here. So the Nalanda tradition, within the Nalanda tradition, the Madhyamaka system of thought was passed down through Master Nagarjuna to Aryadeva and Chandrakirti and so forth. And then there is also the lineage of the implicit or the content of the Panchaparamita Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So with regard to this Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, we have the 100,000 lines or verses of Panchaparamita, which is the most extensive Panchaparamita scripture that we have in Tibetan, and then the middling or the intermediate length, the middle length Panchaparamita is the 25,000 verses, and then we have also the 8,000 verses of Panchaparamita, and the short one is the Heart Sutra that we usually recite. And the shortest one, or the easiest Panchaparamita Sutra, is the sutra, which is only called made up of this single R syllable. And what that short R actually represents or is that things have no objective independent existence, which is how things do appear to us. And in the Heart Sutra, there's form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is no other than form, and form too is no other than emptiness. And then it goes on to say there's no eye, no form, no sound, and so forth, and no eye, no ear, no nose, and so forth. So this, the negative term no does not actually mean that the eye, nose, ear, and so forth do not exist, because the Buddha actually gave teachings. So if he was actually saying that the eye, ear, and so forth do not exist, while they do exist, I mean, then it would be going against our empirical experience. Now, what does it mean when the Buddha said, no eye, no ear, no form, and so forth, is though things do exist by way of convention, worldly convention, but how the things appear to us is as if they have some kind of independent objective existence. So if they were to exist the way they appear to us, what's wrong with that? Then we have, of course, this clinging on to objective existence and things, and that causes us problems. And therefore, we need to consider that the point that things do not exist the way they appear to us. So I want to say this, right after his enlightenment, the Buddha said, this peaceful and profound peaceful which lacks any fabrication and so forth, which is like a nectar dharma that I found. So His Holiness is asking which sutra is it in, and somebody responded by saying that in the it is found in the Dharamsala Sutra. So does this verse also exist in Pali tradition, in Pali scripture or not? So when I actually think about this verse, which says, can we only actually see that this refers to the emptiness alone? But on the other hand, during the first sermon, the Buddha also taught the law of causality, the dependent nature of causality. And so, profound and peaceful could refer to the content of the first sermon, whereas the term free from elaboration could be taken to refer to the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. And then the clear light and uncompounded could refer to Of course, having taught the second turning of the wheel of the Dharma, there were those disciples or followers who could not take it literally. Therefore, it had to be interpreted by saying by talking about the three natures, the dependent, the imputed, and the perfect natures. And therefore, by thinking of these three natures, the Buddha was said to have taught the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. This is one set of teaching of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, but there is another set of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. So the first turning of the wheel of Dharma lays down the foundation of the Buddhism, and then the second turning shows that of the free from elaborations or fabrications, which refers to the emptiness, the objective emptiness, and then object clear light, and then during this third turning, the second set of the third turning, where we find the Tathagata Garbha Sutra, the Buddha taught there of the Buddha nature, or Tathagata Garbha. And so this, freedom from the clear light and the uncompounded nature could be a reference to, taken to be a reference to this set of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. And therefore, we can say within this verse, this verse could actually cover all three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. And then there is also in the tantric teachings, in the Sakya tradition, they mention the union of clarity and emptiness, so which actually are explained in connection or with the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. So in the Sanskrit tradition, there is so much explanation of emptiness, and in the third turning, there is teaching on the subjective clear light of mind, which is also found in the Mahayana Uttara Tantra treatise. And the clear light, actually, the actual clear light is shown in the Ayurveda Yoga Tantra, and as a prelude to that, we have the third turning, the Tathagata Garbha Sutra set of teachings, where the clear light is also mentioned. So the Sanskrit tradition that we study the texts that we study were written by the 17 Nalanda masters. So we have the sets of the collections of the teaching of the Buddha in the Tripitaka, the Vinaya, the Sutras, and the and so forth. And so there are a certain number of volumes, like 13 or so Vinaya texts, and then there are 16 volumes of the Panchaparamita discourse. And then there are other collections of the teaching of the Buddha, such as the miscellaneous sutras and so forth. So the writings of the 17 Nalanda masters are very important for us, where we, in their writings, we also find texts on Vinaya, logic and epistemology, Abhidharma, and so forth. So the teaching that we are going to go through is Buddhapalita, who was one of the main disciples of Master Nagarjuna, and also Master Nagarjuna is one of the main disciples is Aryadeva. So Master Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika, the fundamental wisdom verses of the middle way. So I usually consider it to be good if we could actually have the tradition of studying and giving teachings on the writings of these 17 Nalanda masters. And so, with this in mind, I have received the transmission, reading transmission of Buddhapalita and Chandrakirti's Prasanapada, lucid words from the former Gaden Rinpoche, Kyabji Yongzin, Kyabji Chang, Gaden Rizong Rinpoche. So I have started giving teaching on Buddhapalita last year. So we have covered first 6 chapters last year. And so with regard to Buddhapalita, the Buddhapalita is a commentary, and its root text the basic text it comments on is Mula Madhyamaka Karika, the fundamental wisdom verses of the middle way. So when Tongpen Rinpoche taught the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, he actually made his disciples memorize the text and then taught it to them. So this is a very good tradition. So, of course, there is, in our monastic institutions, the monks do study Madhyamaka Avatara, written by Chandrakirti, but it seems there is less attention paid to the Mula Madhyamaka Karika itself, which is the basic text on which Madhyamaka Avatara is a commentary. So I have memorized some of the root text that we study, but it seems now I've forgotten most of them. And for example, I have memorized the versified text on Vinaya. So with regard to emptiness, earlier on, I had not much interest in my childhood when I was young, carrying on with my studies. I wasn't so enthusiastic as a student, but later on, I actually began taking interest in the emptiness and found that the texts that we study, which come from the Nalanda tradition, have much to say on logic and epistemology as well as psychology. So with regard to the Madhyamaka view of emptiness, who actually inspired me the most to take interest in it was Ngudup Chogni, one of my debate assistants in Tibet, a Mongolian who actually studied in Sera Je monastery. And although I did study the Madhyamaka's texts in Tibet, but after coming into exile, I actually went over these texts. And with regard to the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, these two chapters, chapter 18 and chapter 24, are very important chapters from this text. Do you have the translation of the Mula Madhyamaka Karika in Korean? In any case, the Mula Madhyamaka Karika is a very important text. So first, you should study the 26th chapter, which talks about the 12 links of dependent origination and its forward and reversal processes. And so the ignorance is the first link in these 12 links, and how we are brought about in samsara, the cycle of existence, through ignorance is by karma. And to reverse that, there is the 18th chapter, to overcome karma and delusions and so forth. And then for understanding emptiness well, you should study the 24th chapter. So the reasonings that are given there are wonderful. So I received a teaching, transmission on the Mula Madhyamaka Karika from my teacher, Kundalama Rinpoche Tenzin Gelsen from Kinur. And of course, from Genrin Temba, I received the transmission of the six collection of reasonings by Master Nagarjuna. And Kunalama Rinpoche told me that this Master Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika and Parmanavartika Karika by Dharmakirti are called wonderful writings in Sanskrit. So I urge people to study that of the Pramanavartika Karika by Dharmakirti. So entering the Madhyamaka or middle way is the text written by Chandrakirti Madhyamaka Avatara, and what it enters into is this Madhyamaka Karika. So amongst the Madhyamaka masters, those who actually criticize the Chittamatra philosophical view comes after Master Nagarjuna. And so we find criticism of, one of the critics was Master Chandrakirti in his Madhyamaka Avatara, who wrote the Madhyamaka Avatara and its auto-commentary to as a supplement to the Madhyamaka, Mula Madhyamaka Karika. Liberation is when you extinguish karma and afflictions, and karma and afflictions arise through conceptual construction, and these in turn arise through our mental fabrication, and that is ended by emptiness. And so our mental afflictions, such as attachment and anger, come or arise on the basis of mental conceptual constructs, which is called improper or inappropriate mentation. And one of my American scientist friends is Aaron Beck. When I first met him, he was an American. He was 84, and he is not a religious person as such, but he was someone who treated people who have psychiatric problems because of anger and hatred. And so, having treated such people for a few decades, from his experience, he concluded that from his experience of having treated such people, that when someone is angry at something or somebody, that object or the person appears absolutely negative, but actually the 90% of that negativeness is our own mental projection. So this is exactly what is said in the Mula Madhyamaka Karika when he says karma and afflictions arise from that of the inappropriate mentation. It's the 18th chapter of Buddhapalita. We don't have the translation, of course. His Holiness is referring to chapter 18. So the 17th chapter is an examination of karma and its effects, or the karma and result, action and its result. and chapter 18. Is the examination of self and phenomena. So His Holiness is referring to so it says in the commentary, the mental afflictions arise through these inappropriate mental mentation. So it's very clear that when one person looks at another person and a second person also looks at that same person, one person may see the second person to be totally attractive and beautiful, and another person sees the other person to be repulsive, and so because of anger. And so when you are attached to that person, the person looks totally positive and attractive. Whereas when you are angry at the person looks totally negative. So with anger, the person you are angry at looks totally negative. Whereas when you become attached to the person actually looks totally attractive. So on top of the attractiveness or the ugliness, whichever is there, I mean, we also exaggerate the attractiveness or the ugliness in the person because of our attachment and anger. So this is quite clear, because when we are relaxed and calm, even if somebody actually says something bad, we may not feel very disturbed. Whereas when you are slightly disturbed and even when somebody says something slightly provocative, it actually makes you so very angry. And so these anger and attachment see things and people in exaggerated manner. So karma is what is created through our body, speech, and mind because of being called under the influence of our mental afflictions. And seeing things totally right or wrong or positive and negative arise because of our inappropriate mentation. And those inappropriate mentations also arise through our fabrication, and that is done away with or seized by emptiness. So because things appear to us in a certain fashion and we actually take that to be true, therefore the inappropriate mentation arises. So when actually you are able to see that things do not exist the way they appear to us, then the very basis of this inappropriate mentation loses its identity. And therefore, we can also lose this holding on to things having some independent objective existence. And that is actually done through that of understanding of emptiness. And Kuala Lama Rinpoche also, while reading this verse, said that in the Sanskrit, one can read this final line in the instrumental case, or where it says this is ended by emptiness. Whereas if you take this line to and read it as this fabrication ends within the emptiness, then that shows that of this true cessation. And the previous one reading shows that of the true path. So this verse is very important. So with regard to emptiness, in the 24th chapter of Mula Madhyamaka Karika, the Buddhist essentialists or the realists say that the Madhyamakas are nihilists. And the Master Nagarjuna responds to them and says that what is said to be dependently originated is said to be empty, and that itself is designated, and that is the middle way. And what is, since things are said to be dependently arisen, therefore, there's nothing which is not dependent, therefore there is nothing which is not empty. So these two verses, through these two verses, he responds to the Buddhist realists. So he's not, using only the other reasonings or to prove the emptiness, such as the reasoning of lack of one and many and so forth, which actually shows emptiness from the in terms of negative terms, and whereas Master Nagarjuna says since things are dependently originated, therefore they are empty. So dependent and independent nature things are diametrically opposites. So things could either be one or the other, and therefore even the quantum physicists, when they say that things have no objective existence, if you go down to even these atoms, the subatomic particles, you see the subatomic particles always moving. And when you say something is moving, there should be a part that is antecedent, and that there should be a part which is going behind or in the rear side. So without that, you cannot talk about the particles being made up of their constituent parts. So the quantum physicists say that nothing objectively exists. But in relation to matter, of course, they do say that. And they say as long as there is an observer, there is an observed object. And so the things do appear to the subjective person, and the Chittamatras say that there's nothing externally existing, and they say things exist by way of as a reflection of the imprints of them left on our mind stream. And therefore, on the basis of this understanding, that they say that the object or the object and the perception of it are lack duality. And the quantum physicists also say that as long as there is an observer, there is an observed object, and with regard to the quantum physicists, I've found one article written by, seen one article written by a Chinese quantum physicist who has said that someone who is fully convinced of quantum physics, this idea of nothing existing objectively, and fully convinced with it, and the person, such a person's reaction towards things is not to see things in black and white. So, of course, quantum physicists are not talking about overcoming our negative emotions through this understanding, but the Buddhist understanding of things having no objective independent existence is to combat our mental afflictions. And as I said earlier, the Buddha himself considered it very important to, when he mentioned that this nectar-like Dharma I have found, which is profound, peaceful, clear light and unfabricated and so forth, which so by bringing the 2 points taught in the second and third turnings of the wheel of the Dharma, we can actually feel that nirvana is something possible to attain. The second turning teaches that of the emptiness, whereas the third turning shows that of the clear light, nature of the mind. In the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, Master Nagarjuna says, and he actually uses negative terms mainly. So when you feel convinced that things have no objective independent existence, but since things do affect us, because of our pain and pleasure, therefore, because you ascertain that things have no objective existence, what you can conclude is, though they do not exist independently, objectively, yet they do exist by way of convention, and therefore things are, you can bring up this conviction that things are merely nominal. So the greater conviction you have of things being devoid of objective existence, the greater your understanding of insight into the illusory nature of things. So it may be too much for me to say that I've realized emptiness, but because of having given thought to emptiness for a long time now, I can say that I have some feeling or experience, of feeling for emptiness. That is by reading Master Nagarjuna's texts and so forth. So this really helps you to transform your mind, and your narrow-mindedness and selfish nature can be overcome through the understanding of emptiness and altruistic spirit of enlightenment, bodhicitta. So we open the text on chapter 7.
내가 저보다 와. 좋아요. 어떻게 다시나? 안들디 싸우시는 거다.
Chapter 7 or 8?
말이. 그걸 참되는 말.
Okay. So we go on to chapter 8.
그래서 가.
So which is the examination on agent and action.
그래서
Oh, I think young Rinpoche got up and told His Holiness something else. Go back to chapter 7, perhaps. His Holiness says he's having difficulty finding the page. So we have completed chapter 6.
그렇지 깨봐.
So chapter 7, the examination arising, enduring, and disintegrating. Through your examination of attachment and someone with attachment, you have inspired me to hear about emptiness. Therefore, it would now be appropriate to investigate the characteristics of conditioned phenomena. We shall do that now. Here, the general characteristics of conditioned phenomena are thought to be arising, enduring, and disintegrating. But since it is illogical to teach the characteristics of non-existent things, conditioned phenomena must exist because of their characteristics. Because their characteristics exist. Yet, since the characteristics of conditioned phenomena are not tenable, how could conditioned phenomena exist? So when you do examination of what is characteristic or defining characteristic or definition and definiendum, it would seem that they should, the defining characteristics should exist there first, and then the definiendum. But if the definiendum were not there, you cannot talk about a defining characteristic or definition. So it's very difficult to hold this kind of position, because without an action there is no actor, and without the actor there is no action, and without the action and the actor there is no acted upon object. So you can't have these three, the agent, the action, and the object, unrelated. So of course there are the three times: past, present, and future. We can talk about past Buddhas, present Buddhas, and the future Buddhas. Whereas when you talk about the present, it comes down to a moment, and the Vaibhashikas talk about arising, enduring, and disintegrating or decaying of things. Whereas when we actually come down to the moment, a moment of existence, you cannot actually find the moment, because you may talk about a year, month, made of months, and then days and weeks and days and hours, minutes and seconds. I mean, finally, you will not be able to pinpoint anything as being the present, though we can still say that something has arisen and not yet ceased. So the three times also are difficult to hold. And then, with regard to consciousness, we have to posit consciousness on the basis of continuity. So because of that, we talk about mind stream. Whereas if you divide the mind into different moments, we find it difficult to posit or assert the three times as well. So it's very important to understand this on the basis of the mind. When we talk about the mind being the present and past and future, nothing can be pinpointed as being the present. So the different reasonings that are used to prove emptiness, such as the diamond splinter and reason of the diamond splinter and so forth, are all finally based on the understanding of dependent origination. Yet since the characteristics of conditioned phenomena are not tenable, how could conditioned phenomena exist? Because the characteristics exist. And in what way? Previously the Master said characteristics do not apply to those without characteristics, nor to those with characteristics. Thus they have already been refuted. Moreover, if arising is a conditioned phenomena, it would possess three characteristics. But if arising is unconditioned, how could it be characteristic of a conditioned phenomena? The fourth line of the conclusion should not be applied to the first line, should also be applied to the first line, the proposition. If arising is a conditioned phenomena. So when I was receiving teaching on the Master, this Mulemademaka Karika by Nagarjuna from Nima, he was actually telling me that what is taught in Abhidhammakosha Karika, which when it deals with the compounded phenomena and having the four characteristics, the defining characteristics such as arising and so forth, and these lines could be compared. If arising is a conditioned phenomena, how could it be the characteristic of a conditioned phenomena and so forth? So, of course, when we talk about the characteristics of arising, enduring, and disintegrating, nothing can be found to have any objective independent existence, but they could be still posited in terms of conventional. Arising also possesses three characteristics. How could it be a characteristic of a conditioned phenomena? If arising possesses the characteristic of arising, enduring, and disintegrating, and if also enduring possesses the characteristic of arising, enduring, and disintegrating, and if also in disintegration possesses the characteristics of arising, enduring, and disintegration, then these characteristics would not be different, because their characteristics are the same. So nothing whatever can be found when you put them under the lens of critical analysis, looking for their, searching for their identity, just as it is said in the 22nd chapter of Mulemademaka Karika in examining the Tathagata. It says, the Tathagata is neither one nor separate from the aggregates, neither the Tathagata is in the aggregates nor the aggregates are in the Tathagata. What else is the Tathagata? And so, of course, while we say things have no independent objective existence, we still can assert the conventionality of things. And therefore, the Master Nagarjuna in this Mulemademaka Karika also says the Buddhas have given their teachings based on the two truths, the conventional and the ultimate. And therefore, without relying on, without depending on the conventions, we cannot realize that of the ultimate reality. And without realizing ultimate reality, we cannot attain nirvana. And therefore, in my prayer to the 17 Nalanda Masters, I have written by understanding the true meaning of the two truths, verse number 20, So it is very important to understand the two truths, which are in the Abhisamaya Alamkara is taught in the 10 instructions. The two truths are the nature of the path, and then on the basis of that understanding of the two truths, we can go into the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. So we can see that we can develop a wisdom which goes directly counter to our ignorance, which holds on to things having some objective existence, whereas this wisdom sees the lack of that independent existence in things, and therefore it can, though both look at the same object, their perception are completely opposite, and therefore these the ignorance and so forth can be overcome. And so I say, may I be blessed, by understanding the meaning of the truths, the way things exist. We ascertain through the four truths how we enter and exit cyclic existence, and engendered by valid cognition, our faith in the three refuges will be firm. So on the basis of these understanding of the two truths, we can generate or cultivate or develop the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, on the basis of which we can see that the ignorance and so forth can be overcome, and therefore this valid cognition, engendered by this valid cognition, our faith in the three jewels will be firm. May I be blessed to establish the root of the path to liberation. And Master Nagarjuna, in his salutation verse of Malamadhyamaka Karika, salutes the Buddha for being the best of the teachers, for teaching dependent origination, which is free from the 8 extremes. And also, the Master Nagarjuna praises the Buddha in his other writings for the same reason, which is teaching dependent origination. And Master Tsongkhapa also praises the Buddha for teaching dependent origination in his praise to the Buddha for teaching dependent origination. And so the faith in the Buddha, unshakable faith in the Buddha, could be developed on the basis of understanding the dependent origination nature of things. So understanding of dependent origination also helps to overcome our afflictions, and also to tread along the path to liberation. And therefore, one should develop this understanding through study, reflection, and meditation, and then should be able to journey along the path by developing that of the called total absorption in emptiness. So there is no fault for, just as they already qualify as the general characteristic of conditioned phenomena, it is in reliance on specific characteristics that statements such as this is a vase or this is a cloth exist. So too here also arising, enduring, disintegrating are fully established in reliance on specific characteristics. But how are they different? They are different. They are that which causes generation, that which causes endurance, and that which causes destruction. And in response, this is not tenable. Why? In anything that causes the generation of a vase and the establishment of a vase doesn't cause the generation of something else. That which causes endurance of a vase does not cause the endurance of something else. And that which causes the destruction of a vase does not cause the destruction of something else. Objection, there is no fault since they cause the generation, endurance, and destruction of a vase. Response, but these are not the characteristics of a vase because they are its agents and so forth. But if you imagine arising to be unconditioned phenomena, then we shall explain this. For it was said, how could it be a characteristic of a conditioned phenomena? If something is an unconditioned phenomena, how could it be a characteristic of a conditioned phenomena? If it were a characteristic, since it characterized something, then it would not even characterize itself, since it would lack arising, enduring, and disintegrating. How could that which does not characterize itself characterize something other? But if it did not follow that even an unconditioned phenomena such as nirvana would be a characteristic of a conditioned phenomena, but that is unacceptable. That being so, even if arising, enduring, and disintegrating are unconditioned phenomena, it is untenable because there are characteristics of unconditioned phenomena. When characteristics are examined, then arising, enduring, and disintegrating would have to be a characteristic of conditioned phenomena, either separately or collectively. The Master declares separately the three such as arising are incapable of acting as characteristic of conditioned phenomena. Even collectively, how could they exist even in one thing at the same time? So if the effect, nature of the effect were to exist right at the time of its course, then there is no need for the thing to arise again, to take birth again. So this is with regards to, this shows that of the objection of arisal from self. Also arising, enduring, disintegrating are incapable of separately acting as characteristics of conditioned phenomena. The term incapable ultimately means inadequate or inability and insufficient or not able. But what way? First, arising, enduring, disintegrating are not tenable, for things lack that capability and are non-existent. Thus, arising, enduring, disintegrating are dependent on things. For if the rising of a vase, the enduring of a vase, and disintegrating of a vase did not actually establish a vase, then what would arising, enduring, disintegrating be the characteristics of? To say it is disintegrating means it has disintegrated, and it is non-existent, for that which has that characteristic does not exist. So the moment something comes into being, it is subject to disintegration. And so the very cause which it brings about something is the cause for its disintegration. So this is a very, to understand this is quite profound. Objection, your endurance exists. Response, but endurance is also untenable. Why? Because enduring is connected in disintegration, with disintegration. In fact, if conditioned phenomena are perpetually connected with impermanence, how could they endure? Because enduring and disintegrating are contradictory. It is said below, it is not attainable that a thing now ceasing endures. It is untenable for that which is not now ceasing to be a thing. Also, Master Aryadeva stated, how can things exist that do not endure? How can that they endure since they are impermanent? If at first they were to endure, in the end they would not age. If perpetual entities are impermanent, perpetual entities would not endure. Or else that which was permanent before would become impermanent later. If things are impermanent and endure simultaneously, either being impermanent is wrong or enduring is false. And that being so, also enduring does not exist. And if it does not exist, how could it be a characteristic of conditioned phenomena? So when we talk about a shikpa or something disintegratedness, since disintegrating of a thing is impermanent, therefore that disintegratedness also is impermanent, which is a thing that is brought about by its cause. So further, that which is called disintegrating means disintegratedness and non-existent. That which has on page 4. So that which has that characteristic does not exist. If it does not exist, it has already been taught that arising, enduring, disintegration would be the characteristic of what? Thus, it is also not tenable that disintegration is a characteristic of a conditioned phenomena. And then also the next paragraph. Collectively, there are characteristics in response, even collectively. How could they exist in one thing at the same time? So Buddhapalita is quite essential text. So because Master Nagarjuna mainly emphasizes on the teaching, of emptiness, right from the beginning of his book, Mula Madhyamaka Karika, he rejects things having any objective, independent existence, whilst still maintaining that things do exist by convention. And in the mystical biography of Master Tsongkhapa, it is mentioned that he had a dream of Master Nagarjuna surrounded by his disciples, and amongst them was Buddhapalita. And Buddhapalita in the dream touched the Buddhapalita text on his head, and then the next morning Master Tsongkhapa was said to have actually gained this true insight into emptiness based on Buddhapalita. And Buddhapalita was a disciple of Master Nagarjuna. So Buddhapalita makes it very clear that dependent arising is the main reason to gain insight into emptiness, whereas Bhaviveka is not does not do so. So I usually say that because Buddhapalita has actually received the commentary on Mula Madhyamaka Karika from Nagarjuna, he is very precise in his explanation, whereas Bhaviveka, because he only received a reading transmission from Nagarjuna, he is not so precise as Master Buddhapalita.
Keep it. So, review session at 1:30 today, led by the abbot of Namgyal Monastery, Tom Dog Rinpoche, Venerable Tom Dog Rinpoche, and tomorrow the review session will be led by Geshe Thupten Pesang La at 1:30. And Geshe Thupten Pesang La is also doing a review session today at 3:30. Maybe it will start around between 3:30 and 4 o'clock today and the day after tomorrow. So I'm left with this in case.
저거 부드볼리다게 그 샌드위치 송인 것도가 쉽지 개시 보지. 아니 젊으시 개설로 옆서 송아 성 못된 주 때문에 좋아제. 대는에 반대 상자장 대비정 박박 공부 중 받을 메시로 소환되었어. 젊으시 우메다와 줘야 돼. 우메다와 배 타치버치 배 투리야 배 가수를 보게 태송 배 참문에 봐. 쳐야 돼. 부터벌리대. 흉기탄의 정도가 자들이 인도디아兄弟 그 자신 버리셔 내 남주 뒤시기 러블랭데 고물 주고 기두리 우원님부 잠제 할레버리 아니 부드볼리 더 로빈산제장 고물루기 기루리 리디네 땡주 다유 민장 잡고 땡중 세부 시우스메디 부르부르지도가 아니 로빌링데한테 저랑 여기 차야 말이 저는 중에 점으로 전에 아니 고불루 가서 로빌랭데다 아니 부드볼리데 인자로 고불루 군주네 자시로 생요레스 이제 이 부드볼리데 로빈산제장 자시로기 셰룽 생요레스 십사고 사요레스 로빌랭데 롱장자모도 생요 말레스 이거 드시지 야야 나처럼 가도 잡아봐요지들 제모도 군도상 대다 군지 제조다로 생겨wan데다 당시 로동고 두순심에 겨와다 뭐가나 초동거 보다 다기게 사원 상부 제시 로동고 와게 도난 공부전에 세워게 배제되잖아. 영소되는 노는 것들 대해서